Welcome to this video lesson on verbals and verbs for Latin 2 honors. This is for our review forms quiz coming up. So just to go over verbals first. So on a verb such as amo, amare, amavi, amatum, we have four principal parts. Amo, the first form, means I love. That's the I present tense form of the verb, I love. Amare, the second form, is the present active infinitive, to love. Amawi, the third part, is the perfect active first singular I form, I have loved. And the fourth and final principal part, amatum, is the perfect passive participle, which means having been loved or simply loved as a past participle in English. All right, so talking about how we use these to make the various forms, so you'll notice that amare, the second principal part, is the same as the present active infinitive in our first blank here, amare. And then if you look down to the next blank, amari, well, that's the present passive infinitive. That would be to be loved. Amare with the E is to love. Amari with a long I is to be loved. And you'll notice the change there. The final short E has turned to a long I. That's normally how you make the present passive infinitive. You just change that final E to a long I. Do note, though, if we move down to mito, mitere, verbs that have a short ere, ere, mitere, capere, so on, the short ere at the end of the present active infinitive, you change that whole thing rather than just the final E to a long I. So mitere, instead of miteri, you get miti for the passive. So there you see it, miti, that's going to be to be sent. All right, now back up to amo, our first example, and we'll move down to the third blank. So the perfect active infinitive. Perfect active has or have in it in English. So perfect active infinitive, infinitives in English always start with to. So here, to have loved is what we want to say. Now, I said a minute ago that amawi, the third principal part, is the perfect active, I have loved. So you'll notice that amawi is used to make amawise. So you take off the final long I and you add isse, and there we get amawise in our third blank, to have loved. That's how you make it for all of these verbs, so you're always going to go to the third principal part, take off the final long I, and add isse. All right, then for the fourth blank, the perfect passive infinitive, for amo, this is going to be to have been loved. Notice that since it's perfect passive, you might guess, hey, let's use the perfect passive participle, which is the fourth or final principal part. So you look through the principal parts, amo, amare, amawi, amatum, fourth part. We take amatum down, drop it into the blank, and then you add the separate word esse. Amatum esse. And I'll just point out here, amatum is the neuter form, but you could have other forms of this participle as well. Participles are verbal adjectives, so they can change gender and case and so on. So you might have amata esse or amatus esse or various other forms. Anyhow, so amatum esse, we've got the fourth part, and then we add the separate word esse. Now going down to the fifth blank, the present active imperative singular. This is how I give a singular command to somebody to do a thing. So amo, amare is to love, so I'm going to tell somebody singular, love. The way I do that, I go to the second principal part, amare, and I take the re off. Now I have ama, and that's what goes here in our fifth blank, ama. That is also the way we're going to do it for other verbs. So if you look down to dokeo, dokere, and down to its present active imperative, it's doke without the re again. So that works for all verbs. When you go to the plural, though, we do have to watch out. So first, switching from ama, singular imperative, to amate, plural imperative, you can see that we've just added a te. So again, same thing, second principal part, amare, drop off the re, you get ama, and then to make it the plural imperative, add te, amate. So that's going to be love as a plural command. The thing you have to watch out for here is that a few verbs, the verbs that have the short ERE, such as mito, mitere, or copio, copere, those type of verbs have a little bit of a different plural imperative. Notice down here for mito, mitere, if I'll just bring it up to the top, mito, mitere, so I take off the RE and get mite for the present active imperative singular, mite. But when I go to make it plural, instead of mitete, as I might expect, I get mitite with an I. So really that's the irregularity, just having an I instead of what you might expect to be an E. There's a whole historical linguistic reason for that, but you don't need to worry about it. Just remember that it's, a little bit funky here. So mite, singular, mitite, not mitete, mitite for the plural imperative. Same thing for cape, capite, which you would see down here for that next verb. All right, now back up to our first verb, and we're going to look at the present active participle. So present active participle, this is the verb ing for amo amare. It's going to be loving. So to say loving in Latin, present active participle, we say amans, amantis. Now if you look at the principal parts, you can see this is coming from the second one, amare. If you take amare and you take off the RE, then you add NS, you've got the nominative form amans. If you add NTIS, amantis, you have the genitive form. Now I will note here, in the infinitive amare, there is a long mark on that middle A. If you wish to put the long mark here, you are welcome to. So amans and amantis, you could put the long marks. By convention, most books would put the long mark on the first one, not on the second one, and I honestly don't put it on either because of the phonetic rule in Latin where if you have two consonants after a vowel, that syllable is long by nature, by position, or it's long by position, I should say, because of the fact it's followed by two vowels. So NS following A, NT following A, that means that syllable with the A is long. In any case, basically, I would say I wouldn't count off here if you put the long mark. On the very last blank, the perfect passive participle, you might remember I said that the fourth principal part, amatum, is the perfect passive participle, and so it is. So if I go ama, amare, amawi, amatum, last one, amatum, that is the neuter form of the perfect passive participle. So if you go down to the last blank here, for this verb, I've got amatus aum. Well, amatus would be the masculine form, amata would be the feminine form, amatum would be the neuter form, which we see in the principal parts listed above. So essentially, you're just copying down that fourth principal part. You could put the three genders like I did. If I don't say specifically which gender, I don't care. You can just pick one too. So amatus aum, amatus masculine, amata feminine, amatum neuter. All right, well that should explain how to do all the verbals. And let's look on to verb forms. Oh, I will notice here before we go on, sum and ao, these verbs don't have passive forms typically, so that's why some of the forms are missing there for them. Okay, going on to verb conjugations. First, just going through the active endings. The active endings are O or M. Notice that amo has the I ending O. That means I love. Amabam has the M ending. The M ending also means I. Amabam means I loved or I was loving. So the first ending again for an active verb is either O or M. The second ending is S. The third ending is T. Then mus in the plural, then tis, and then nt. Now the O or M equals an I subject. The S, second singular, equals a you singular. The T, third singular, equals a he, she, it. The mus equals we, first plural. The tis equals a y'all, second plural. And the nt equals a they, third plural. All right, so those are the active endings. The passive endings, if you look into the next two columns, you'll see the passive forms of some verbs there. Are, ris, tur, mur, many, enter. All of these except for many have an R in them. So that's one thing that distinguishes the passive endings, and many is definitely the odd one out. It ends with a long I and it has no R. So the R ending in amor or amabar, that means I passive. The ris ending is a you singular passive. The tur ending is he, she, it passive. Mur is we passive. Many is y'all passive. And enter is they passive. So just as an example, let's do an imperfect past tense. Amabar, I was loved. Amabaris, you singular were loved. Amabatur, he, she, or it was loved. Amabamer, we were loved. Amabamini, y'all were loved. Amabantur, they were loved. Okay? And then we've just got one more set of endings to look at, and that is the perfect active. So look back in the first column, or first couple of columns there again, and look down to amawi, amawisti, amawit. Let me just bring it up to the top. Amawi, amawisti, amawit, amawimus, amawistis, amawerunt. So the perfect active endings are special for this tense. They are not used in any other tense, and they are not used in the perfect passive. So the endings are e, isti, it, imus, istis, erunt. E, isti, it, imus, istis, erunt. So you can see that amawi is made from the third principal part. I think I mentioned earlier, amawi means I have loved. It is the perfect active first person singular I form. Amawi, I have loved. And so again, see that it's coming from the third part, and then we have the e, isti, it, imus, istis, erunt endings. So if I were to translate these, amawi, I have loved, amawisti, you have loved, amawit, he, she, it has loved, amawimus, we have loved, amawistis, y'all have loved, amawerunt, they have loved. Perfect passive also is rather specific and different from the other verb forms in the passive. Instead of a one-word form with passive endings, the perfect passive of all verbs is made from the fourth principal part plus sumus est, sumus estis sunt as a separate word. So if I look at amo, amare, amawi, amatum, the fourth part amatum is the perfect passive participle, and we use that to make the perfect passive conjugated forms. So again, bringing it up to the top, I just have the masculine forms listed primarily here, although you can see the feminine and neuter endings up above. So if I'm doing this in the masculine, I would say amatus sum, I have been loved. Amatus est, you have been loved. Amatus est, he has been loved. If I change to amata, it would be she has been loved. Amatum would be it has been loved. In the plural, we get amati sumus, we have been loved. Amati estis, y'all have been loved. And amati sunt, they have been loved. The uses have changed to e's because e is the plural of us. If I did feminine gender, amata in the singular, and then it would change to amatai with the ae ending in the plural. If I did neuter, amatum in the singular, I would switch to amata, the neuter plural, on the plural side. So that explains that. Then finally, we just need to remind ourselves of the infixes or the tense signs for imperfect and for future. So imperfect always has a BA tense sign. So notice ama, bom, the BA is telling us that's imperfect. So that's verbed or was verbing. And only thing I would say there is that if you get an IO verb like copio, you're going to end up saying EA ba. So you're going to have I, long E before the BA. That's a little bit irregular, so you got to be used to that. So copie bomb, and then in the passive, copie bar. Same thing happens with audio, so audio bomb, and then audio bar in the passive. Okay, we've got one tense left to talk about. Future has two ways of being made in regular Latin verbs. You got the bo be boo future, so amabo, amabis, amabit, I will love, you will love, he she it will love, that's a bo be boo Notice the last form, amabunt, they will love. That's the bu in the bo, bi, bu. And then you've got one other type of future formation for regular verbs, and that's called the A and E future. So if I look at mito, mitere, so third IO, and fourth, that means any verb that has a short ERE infinitive and any verb that has a long IRE infinitive will use the A and E future. So notice here, mitam, mites, mitet, mitemus, mitetis, mitent. I will send, you will send, and so on. Notice only the first one uses the A, mitam, with the A plus the M ending, which means I. All the other forms use E plus the regular endings. I will say for futures of third IO and fourth, you're going to have an extra I in front of them as you kind of get used to with those verbs. So not just kapam, kapes, but kapiam, kapies, kapiet, kapiemus, kapietis, kapient. And same thing with audio. You're going to go audiam, I will hear, audies, you will hear, audiet, he, she, it will hear, and so on. And in the passive for these, just switch to the arvis, tur, mer, mini, enter, rather than the active endings. All right. There are some irregularities in sum. AO doesn't have too many irregularities except for the present tense. So I would look at the present tense of AO to make sure you understand the irregularities there. With sum, you're going to have to look at least the first three tenses here to note their irregularities, because eram does not have the BA like you normally get in imperfect. Ero, eris, erit, that doesn't have the bo, be, boo, or the A and E future, so those are irregular. All right, well, I hope that helps you with studying these. Vale, omnes.